Good evening and welcome to A Celtic State of Mind. I am here with James Mackenzie, our newest signing at Axom, and we're here to talk about a 7-0 victory. Who cares the level of the opposition? You need to get back in the saddle, James. You need to start winning games again. We've done that with a bit of style. I think that when you change so much in the second half, you appreciate a drop in intensity, but 7-0, pretty chuffed with that.
Yeah, we were up against a sort of regional local team, but again, it's our first game of the pre-season. We're wanting to see a couple of the new, fresher faces coming into the lineup, impressing. And then when you switch over in the second half, the majority of the players that are getting subbed on are from the B team, so a drop in quality was expected, but we still got a goal in the second half.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll talk about who got that goal as well, and amongst other discussions about some of the performances. But get involved in the chat section, in the comment section. Ryan Taylor is buzzing. I think we're all buzzing to have Celtic back. It doesn't matter who we're playing. Wayne Jackson, hail. All here's to the new season, 22-23. That's scary, just calling it that. And Wayne goes on to say, great commentary coaching from Hart and Siegrist. Now, we were talking about Joe Hart and his situation at the beginning of the game, James, whereby we didn't really feel as though he'd had anybody pressurising him, breathing down his neck. He's got that now, and we've seen one of our new signings in Siegrist in a Celtic jersey. And throughout that first half, I think Joe Hart was very vocal. You could hear him and some of the expletives he was using, but he plays like a captain. I know he was captain tonight, but he plays like a captain, doesn't he?
Yeah, when you're such an experienced figure as Joe Hart, you've played in the biggest competitions that you can possibly play in as a footballer, and you've got a very young backline in front of you, Christopher Julian aside, plus the new man in Alexandro Bernabe. You're going to want to make sure everyone's focused, encourage them, sort of guide them, make sure the backline's sorted. And that's exactly what you expect from a senior figure, which we've only heard positive things about Joe Hart from the back room.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I remember when he signed, or the chat before he was signing, and then maybe afterwards, there were some people who were concerned at this kind of persona that Joe Hart had. And I think he's turned a lot of people's views around about him. I remember the very first presser that he gave after he signed, and everybody was extremely impressed with the way he comes across. He's been like that for his entirety of his Celtic career. And we heard, you actually WhatsApped us during the game, that Ross Doohan, strangely enough, we spoke about Ross Doohan at the beginning of the game. He has sealed his permanent move to Tranmere Rovers, where I think he's done particularly well. So it's the three goalies that were in the squad tonight, plus Scott Bain, isn't it? Am I forgetting anybody else? So we've got Hazard out on loan, we've got Barkas out on loan. That's Doohan away as well. He's the second goalie to leave permanently. Do you think Bain is going to be kept? I know that he's been given I think it was a 4-year deal last season.
Yeah, I think he will be kept. I'm not the biggest Scott Bain fan myself, but I think there is reason to sell him, but there's sort of players that Celtic just keep around for the sake of keeping around. There's been many of those players over the years, and I can see Scott Bain be one of those.
Potentially. I always think back to Zaluska. Remember, we brought in Zaluska, one of the best players outside of the two Glasgow sides in Scotland, and he barely played. But he was there for ages, and it often is a goalkeeper, a backup goalie that does that. Ewan Boy Martin, welcome back, Ewan Boy, regular contributor. You have appeared a number of times now on the show as well. Hail trips, easy game, but very impressed with some of the players. Let us know who you were impressed with, guys. You're in 350 strong tonight. We're all here to talk about the Celtic. We're back as part of the action. You will have noticed we didn't do a half-time bulletin. Kind of trialling that, James, because during this season I hope to be at most of the home games, all going well on that front. And so we're trying to figure out how the match day coverage is going to look. And, it probably won't be possible to do a half-time thing because we don't have broadcasting space within the stadium, but we'll do the pre-match, we'll do the post-match, and we are in talks to try and have somewhere to do that near the stadium as well. Kevin Layden, good to see young Kenny and Vata on the score sheet. Thought Big Lawal looked a rock at the back for such a young lad. Well, let's start off with the youngsters, because at the beginning of the game we were looking at that team. We knew it always is a hybrid of the reserves or the B side. A few youngsters thrown in first-team players, those on the fringes. And that's what it was tonight. And obviously the international players weren't playing. But you could, I guess, collectively refer to the mentioned players that Kevin has listed there as the youngsters, and there was a few others that came on as well. And of course, I think that at the beginning of the game, I tipped Kenny to score a hat-trick. He almost got a hat-trick. We'll talk about Julien elbowing him out the roads just to score a goal. But let's talk about the youngsters. How impressed were you? I mean, we were saying before the game, James, this is their opportunity. This is their Tony Ralston moment. Show us what you can do, because if you impress, I'm pretty sure Ange will keep you around.
Yeah, admittedly, as someone who hasn't seen much of Johnny Kenny at the Celtic B level, I thought he looked very fast, very quick, very alert. I mean, I can't remember if it was the third or fourth goal, there was that many. It was a block shot and it was quick reactions to get it on the volley into the back of the net. I thought he showed some real qualities that can be built upon and molded into a very good player. I thought Bosun Lawal was tremendous today. I thought out of all the young players that played in that lineup, he looked the most like a first team player. I thought he looked very composed.
Yeah.
In that backline.
He did. We mentioned Boyata before, and I think he was striding about a bit like Boyata. What I used to curse him for was losing the ball quite a lot. You know, he was quite, he looked composed always, but then he was lacklustre at times with the ball at his feet. From what I've seen, and I'm not saying that this guy's good enough to play at that level just yet, but he looked very composed, like you say. And what I was impressed about with Kenny in particular was the work rate, the defensive play, that ability to come back and win the ball, not afraid to mix it up. And he definitely tried his best to get the hat-trick. But once we come to Julien, we might have a wee chat about that one as well. What about Vata? I'm a bit concerned because of what's happened with the likes of Ben Doak and the plethora of other players that have left who came through Celtic's academy, some who hadn't played for the first team. And they've flown the nest. And I think it's a matter of time, particularly when he is performing the way he has been doing for the underage levels of Ireland. And I just think that, he's one of the players that we really need to keep a close eye on. We cannot let the vultures turn his head. It's one of the things we were talking about, the father and son scenario when Jordan Larsson, his name was mentioned as a potential striker coming in. But I'll tell you what, I think we've got a superstar whose dad also played for Celtic in Rocco Vata.
Yeah, I thought he looked really promising. It was, for his goals, a very good ball off the top from Liam Shaw. And then he took it down really well. It was a really composed finish as well, right into that top corner. Dare I say, I thought Rocco Vata looked better than James Forrest didn't. When I thought Vata played better in that second half than Forrest played in that first half. And I think Celtic should really be giving these sorts of players more opportunities because, as you said, Vata's performing on the youth international stage. We saw right before Ben Doak left for Liverpool, he was free scoring for the Scotland. I think it's the under-18s or the under-17s. So when these players start performing at that sort of level, that's when the big clubs, their youth academies will be taking a look at them. So we need to try and tie down these assets.
No, you're absolutely right, and I know I moan about it all the time, the amount of players that leave us before we see the fruits of our labour. And I also appreciate that we do something similar with the likes of Lawal. We've just spoken about him. We, snatched him from Watford's under-23 team, I think it was. In fact, I think it was the under-18 team when we signed him. And we've done that in the past. I mean, even some of the players that have left in the pre-season, Jonathan Afolabi, he was a Southampton youth prospect, and we brought him in. Oko Flex as well. We brought him in as well from Arsenal. So we do it at the same time. But yes, Vata, I just feel he's a special talent. And, getting away from the fact that his dad played for Celtic in any case, just on his own, the basis of his own talent, I just think that he's one that we need to wrap it in cotton wool, give him some first team opportunities and make sure that he makes a name for himself in the green and white hoops of Celtic. Stuart Miller liked the look of Vata when he came on. Absolutely agree with that. And wouldn't it be tremendous if he made a real impact this campaign as well? A few of the other guys came in. Did anyone else who maybe came on as a sub, James, anyone else impress you at all from the young troops?
Not really as much as the sort of headline standout players. The only thing that really caught my eye was young Matthew Anderson, a left back, Scottish, coming through at Celtic with the number 63. it's surely written in the stars that he's got to succeed, right?
Well, you said that in the group chat as well during the game, and absolutely. Michael Ross, all about fitness, nothing more. I totally get that, Michael. But I do also get the feeling that, if you show up, regardless if you show up, I think Ange Postecoglou is the type of person that will certainly reward you for that as well. David Ferguson, the very least you ask of your players is to try. Ajeti couldn't give a monkeys if he was out there or not. Get rid. I mean, that, I guess, if we've been talking about the youngsters, there's also a group of players who were involved tonight who I guess have been written off. And I would probably include Ajeti in that. I think Chris Jullien maybe had been written off. And maybe even to a slightly lesser degree, Mikey Johnston has been written off time and time again. So let's have a talk about these three players. What did you make of their performances? We'll start off with Ajeti. See how David has brought up the performance of Ajeti. Does he have the unfortunate knack, James, of just looking disinterested?
I put it on Twitter that it was after a very bad miss from Ajeti, and I think it was one of maybe 3 bad misses in that game. This is a local regional team, and he's strolling about the park, looking out of sorts in a team full of youth players. I think his time really is done. The fact that Johnny Kenny was starting up top ahead of him in the race to get minutes should sort of say everything for Ajeti's future.
No, you're spot on. I think I look at the lineup and you say to yourself, right, so you've got players of experience. You've got Joe Hart, who's played at the very highest level. And yeah, his place is cemented in the first team, but the attitude that he shows, you've seen how frustrated he was getting in the first half, shouting at the referee when I think 3 times we tried to take a free kick and the boy was too close to the ball, all that kind of stuff. And then you look at Jullien and you think, well, Jullien's confidence might be a bit low, he might have checked out, he might still be looking to go elsewhere, but I think he equipped himself pretty well. And in particular, when he scores that goal and steals it off young Johnny Kenny to get his hat-trick, there was no doubt in my mind he wanted that goal, did Chris Jullien. So pass marks for him. But when it comes to Ajeti, I really have tried for this player, because I look at him, I think he's 25, right? He got the big move to West Ham. It was a big move for us when he came to Celtic in terms of the outlay financially. I know that players coming from England may see it as a step backwards, but it was a big signing for us. And I remember in his first half a dozen games thinking, this guy's going to score goals. And since then, I mean, Ange gave him a chance at the beginning of last season. He played games, he played and scored in Europe. And I just don't think he's applying himself. And what frustrates me as a fan watching that is, if you do see your future elsewhere, I think you look at the example of someone like Chris Ayer. You can compare Chris Ayer and Odsonne Edouard, the performances of those two players in the final season under Neil Lennon. And I don't think at any time Ayer ever let himself down. He never played brilliantly in every game. No one did that season. But the way that he applied himself, James, and I'm not seeing any of that application from Ajeti, and it frustrates the life out of me. Because of the transfer fee, where he came from, he'll be one of the highest earners. Surely he's looking at the scenario and thinking, right, my stock has really, really dropped. I've had 2 really bad moves. He's been a flop times 2. Go out and prove that at least you're going to apply yourself. Where is he going to go? Who's going to want to sign this guy?
Yeah, even if it's just to put himself in the shop window to get himself a move, you would think he would be trying his best to perform, or even just to try and give himself a second chance at Celtic, because he did sign the contract to join Celtic in the first place, so he obviously wanted to succeed at Celtic. So he's got 2 very good reasons to be pushing himself to try and succeed. And he's moving about very laboured on the park in a pre-season friendly. It's not the best.
No, and again, the number of excuses that we could have used for various different reasons for players not looking fit or sharp, there's none of them that you can go to with Ajeti at this stage. He's had a decent layoff. He's got his pre-season. He's been at the club, so it's not as though he's had 2 seasons at the club. 2 seasons at the club, and under 2 managers, he's failed to impress overall. And I do think back to that Ross County game. Obviously before the fans got back into the stadium, where they knock us out the cup 2-0, and there's an opportunity for him. I think it was 1-on-1. He hits the post, and then just the close up where he turns around with that big smile on his face, and you think, I'm not laughing. I don't think many people are laughing at, and I know sometimes that might just be a natural instinct or a reaction, James. But he's doing himself no favours. He's doing himself absolutely no favours. Thank you everybody for getting involved. We're heading towards 6:50 on a Wednesday night after a pre-season friendly against, as you say, a local regional side. Celtic wins 7-0. Who were you impressed by? Who do you think has given the gaffer something to think about? The other of those players who may have been written off, I guess, was Mikey Johnston. And, we were hearing from Colin Watt that Mikey's been doing a bit of work with his ex-teammate to try and build himself up. He's obviously suffered a lot from injury over the last few seasons. And yet, I think him and Jamesy Forrest are the two players who have been written off the most in this squad. He certainly applied himself tonight, scores a goal, sets up a few others. What did you make of his performance? And I know, and I take into account, the opposition wasn't great tonight.
Yeah, Mikey Johnston, he seems to play a lot in the pre-season friendlies over the last sort of 2 or 3 seasons, and he always seems to get in about the goals. But then again, as he said, you can't really look too much into these games against the local regional opposition. You should be looking more into it when we're playing against Blackburn and, is it Norwich, I believe, in the later friendlies. Mikey Johnston, he's a player that's always confused me because he's very good on the ball technically, but whenever he gets in front of goal, he always seems to sort of lose the head a bit. He doesn't seem to be able to apply the finishing touch. And there's been big games where he's had the chance to play and he's just not impressed. But if they wrote off Tony Ralston and he came back, so everybody's got a chance.
Yeah, you're right. And all we ever hear, and you can hear it from the commentary team as well, because obviously they've got that access. They're watching the players training, they're watching the players integrating off the park. All you ever hear is good things about Mikey Johnston from within the club, about his talent, about the way that he performs, the way that he works, etc. But I'm like yourself, I'm not seeing it enough, and in particular in the big occasions, I'm not seeing it enough from Mikey Johnston. He's at that age now where you really need to be playing, and you need to be playing consistently. Age is no barrier. Just look at the last season that Abada had. I mean, he's a shining example of that.
It's just not that comparison.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the way, and also the circumstances of a young man coming over here, and I know Beachon was a massive help to him, but he just grabbed the situation by the scruff of the neck, and he performed extremely well. And you imagine a player of that age coming through our system and performing the way that Abada did. We're not getting that from Mikey Johnston. There was a few occasions in the first half where I looked at him and I thought he just loves running into a sea of bodies, and hope that he can trick them. But I think he's better when he's a wee bit more direct in terms of getting that ball in and creating a chance, because more often than not, when he runs into the sea of bodies, he loses the ball, he overruns it, and I just think that he's much better at creating a wee bit of space and getting the ball in.
For that. It was a low ball in for Johnny Kenny. It was a really good assist.
Yeah, it was. And he's one of the players as well, James, you're urging him to do well. You want him to succeed. You think to yourself, prove us wrong, do your Tony Ralston. But I'm on the fence. The jury's out. He played well tonight, and let's hope, like you say, he can still turn it on when it comes to a wee bit stronger opposition. Ian McMonigal, I've got to thank everybody. 650 strong tonight. You're commenting on YouTube. Good to see Ajeti was back in form. I don't want to give anybody too much stick tonight. It's the first game, etc. But, we are looking at streamlining the squad. You think about the fact that Julien was on his way out. He was going to sign for Schalke. It was a loan to buy. And you think that we probably would have done something in the transfer market before now had that deal gone ahead. So it is important to get players who are really not contributing, like Ajeti, like Bolingoli, who I don't even think's travelled, like Sorrow. These players, I just think, you need to move them on. Brown Warrior, good workout second half. Nice to see Ideguchi in his natural role.
It's very good.
That takes us on to Ideguchi. I mean, if there was one player who impressed the most, it was him. And I've got another section of players here. We've spoken about the youngsters and those who've been written off. There's a few players who, due to any fault of their own, probably didn't get started last season. Ideguchi was one of the players. I'm not sure which category James McCarthy goes into. Is he written off, or is he one of the guys that's not got started yet? I'm not sure. But let's talk about Ideguchi, because I thought he looked very, very promising tonight.
Yeah, he was brilliant in the middle of the park. He was starting every attack that we had, progressing it from the defence. And wherever he would get the ball in the middle of the park, you would always hear 3 different players shouting to receive the ball off him because he would receive it in such good space. And the manager and Harry Kewell were shouting really loud at him from the touchline. So it's obvious that he's been putting in work with those two specifically. So there's clearly a lot of potential with Ideguchi for the future at Celtic. The manager and the coaching team see it, so we'll wait and see what the next few games have for him.
Dare I call him being like a new signing? It feels like that a wee bit with Ideguchi. He was the one who we didn't see enough of last season, like you say. I remember at the Rex, that was a terrible couple of challenges I felt actually in that game, because was that the same game that McGregor got hit? Yeah, still wearing the mask. Yeah, I actually felt that both challenges were OTT that particular night as well, and I'm pretty sure more people are talking about the likes of Ideguchi. Nice game, very impressed with Ideguchi, says Ewan Boy Martin. He did look the part, very direct. I even suggested he might have been a number 6 at the beginning of the game. How wrong was I? He's definitely not. Stevie Boy, Big Lawwell looked good. Him and Julien didn't look out of place. They didn't, and he didn't look like a guy who's 10 years younger than Julien, who's hardly played any senior football. In fact, is this his first game at senior level, albeit not competitively? Gary Melrose, a couple of decent ball-playing centre-halves on display. What do you make of that with Julien? I know that you're hoping Julien can turn this around. On paper, he's a player that should be able to fit into Ange Postecoglou's side, isn't he?
Yeah, there's never been any sort of issues with Julien played out from the back. The big problem that would be with Christopher Julien is when he comes up against a physical striker that will proper push up against him. You saw that against Lyndon Dykes, and even struggled when Alfredo Morelos would sort of barge into Christopher Julien a bit. But I think he has all of the qualities to be able to fit into an Ange Postecoglou system.
You know, you've mentioned there Lyndon Dykes, and I think there was a European game where he was getting bullied in many ways, and I felt that he lost his composure.
The Copenhagen game.
Yeah, but he lost his composure, didn't he? And I think he did that against Lyndon Dykes. People spoke about him being spooked, etc. And
it's confusing though, because he can do that, but then he can play man of the match in both legs against Lazio, against Ciro Immobile. So it's very confusing.
It is. It can be. But I've got to say, if he can come back to the form that we were used to, he's definitely an asset. And he's a player that, you think to yourself, you're going out into the transfer market. There's no guarantees out there. We know what Julien can bring. I was looking at his mobility because I was a wee bit worried when I seen him against Wraith Rovers that night. But there was no real concerns. He seemed pretty mobile. And yeah, he's one of the guys. The transfer didn't work out. Maybe he does have a future this season. We shall wait and see. Ewan Boy Martin Vata, a star for the future. We need to keep him. That's the biggie for me, Ewan Boy. We've lost far too many youngsters, and I'm pretty sure there will be interest if there isn't already at some point this season. Michael Hennigan, welcome to the show. You're commenting on YouTube. I thought Lawwell looked the part there. Difficult to say against such opposition, but he might be the centre-half we're looking for. I'll tell you what. If you look at the performance tonight of Lawwell and you think, well, you hope that a few of the youngsters make an impression. That'll be another one. Stephen Welsh, and I'm a fan. I'm a fan of Stephen Welsh. But I think after maybe a dozen games or so, if he's still putting in performances like that, you think you'll have no concerns with that boy playing in the first team. And Egyptian King, Big Boston, didn't look out of place once. I think universally everybody enjoyed his performance tonight. Who was doing all the shouting on the sideline? Was it a combination of Harry Kewell and Ange Postecoglou, James?
I think the big booming voice would have been Ange, because he loves a good shout on the touchline, but you would have heard Harry Kewell and beside him there as well.
Oh, definitely. David Stalker, Ajeti needs to go now. And we've done okay, I think, in getting players out the door. I mean, let's be honest, we've got 2 different moves for ball. We convinced 2 clubs to take ball in goalie. But for other matters outside of football, he came back. We managed to find a club for Barkas. You were telling me earlier there was a live Utrecht game on YouTube. I don't know if anybody was brave enough to watch it, but apparently he didn't play too well against Queen's Park.
Park friendly. you would be wanting to watch that.
No, but again, with Queen's Park, it's a real success story. I've been watching that, quite keenly because obviously we loaned a couple of players out to them, and I think that the chat was that Dembele was offered a move to Queen's Park at some point as well, and he wasn't really that interested. Francisco Weldanino enjoyed that. New strip looks excellent. Big fan. A young Vata cannot argue with either of these points. Right.
I've got to ask you on the new strip, what did you make of the goalie top?
Well,
I think it looks ridiculous.
You think?
I don't know
what don't you like about it?
I don't know what that pattern is in the back. It looks a wee bit mental. I've started to turn a new leaf on that home shirt though.
Well,
when I saw it with the socks, then I've started to turn on that a bit.
Well, this is the thing, right? Everybody knows, if you tune into Celtic State of Mind, I'm pretty obsessed with football jerseys. We do have a new show whereby a football jersey collector, be that replica or match worn, comes into the studio. We talk about their top 10 jerseys. And the first one is with David Badura, who's actually a Livingston fan, but he brings in a collection of jerseys from all over the globe. And I'm fascinated with fashion and with jerseys and football match-worn kits and all that kind of stuff. So when I seen first of all, the leaked images, like most of the complaints, I was looking at the silver star, I was looking at the silver Adidas stripes on the shoulders. But the caveat to that, and I used last season's third kit as an example, I want to see it in action. I want to see the full kit being worn in a game, because often they look completely different than they do in these promo shots. So the kit was launched last Saturday, I think it was, the day after Jota was unveiled, and it went into a bit of meltdown, did social media. We got sent a few images, put them out. There was more negative than positive, let's just say. But I think looking at it tonight, maybe the sponsorless version's always going to look better, right? I liked it. I actually liked it. I don't think the silver stripes look silver. We know they are, but they look a bit darker on the players. Goalkeeper strips, they're bizarre anyway. I mean, you just need to look at some of the ones we had in the 1990s to know that
even some of the pink numbers and the sort of yellow medicine looking colours that we've had nowadays, they look absolutely disgusting.
You've got to go back for the ultimate goalie jerseys. You've got to go back to the centenary year. We actually had two, right? So you had the silver one and you had the yellow version. And this was at a time where they used to put big pads on the elbows as if, you were going to be playing in a goal mouth covered in glass. Maybe they foreseen the future. And they had like big pads on the shorts and all this. But they were exactly the same, but one was silver and one was yellow. You'll remember in the cup final against United, Alec McKnight, actually I was going to say he was wearing the yellow one, but now I'm doubting myself. They were beautiful. I'm not so sure on the most recent goalie strips, I'm going to be honest.
Yeah,
it's poor. It's poor. Dermot, Celtic, Rabito, and people will be sitting there going, Paul talking about fashion, geez a break, mate, you shop in Matalan. Nice start to the year. Good to see the boys back. Standouts, Hatate and Mikey. And I do want to talk about Hatate, because sometimes when somebody has a good first half, it's not as recent in your memory. He was outstanding tonight.
Everything went through Rio Hatate. I've just got to look at the goal that Rio scored himself. He calls out to James Forrest, plays the pass out to him, jogs into the space as easy as he like, and then he basically passes it into the net. I think everything went round. The game went with Rio Hatate, and next season he's going to be a joy to watch. Off a full pre-season without having played an entire season before it, he's going to be something else.
Well, I'm going to finish it off by talking about the players that we've seen making their first appearance for Celtic, albeit not a competitive appearance. But before I do that, I've seen a lot of chat, and it's not just from other sides' fans talking about we've not improved enough in the transfer window because we've just signed a couple of guys that were already here. And I look at that and think, well, yeah, okay, I get that. However, you've got to also realise that Cameron Carter-Vickers and Jota, they're coming in under the circumstances whereby they're getting the full pre-season, which I think is absolutely vital for these players coming in and getting the full pre-season. They're going to have that, unity already with the players that they wouldn't have had. It would have developed. They wouldn't have had it instantly when they joined the club, and they wouldn't have known about the city and all that kind of stuff, which is deadly important. You've seen how many flop signings we had during the pandemic. and obviously they were isolated from their teammates, etc. So it is vital. All that's already there. So the type of player you're going to get from a Jota or a CCV this season, I think you're looking at a version 2.0 of both of those players. You've then got to take into account the likes of Hatate, Maeda, Giakoumakis, guys who didn't come in, before the pre-season, who know the club really well, they know their teammates really well, but they're actually there's a possibility that they've not hit top form yet. The galvanisation of success. They're playing with a team that knows how to win, knows how to get things over the line. So I don't buy that we've not really strengthened, because you've also got to look at the fact that team, that very young team, has bonded, and next season you would expect that to be a better side, even if you weren't to have brought in a new left back and a new goalie who we're going to talk about. What do you make about when you see these comments coming out on social media, James? What do you make of them?
I don't buy it at all. These are the same players that were a part of a team that exceeded all expectations, because let's not forget, many had us finishing third last season behind Aberdeen. So these players exceeded all expectations last season, so who's to say they're not going to go on and do the exact same thing this season? And also on that point, the main sort of side that's making those sort of points is from their side of Glasgow, and what have they done in this transfer window apart from re-sign their players? So it's a bit hypocritical.
Oh, it definitely is. Final word then, we've spoken about the players who may be getting a fresh start, like Ideguchi, those who have perhaps been written off in the form of Jullien and Mikey Johnston, who might still have a future at Celtic. And we've spoken about some of the youngsters who impressed tonight, in particular Lowell and Vata. What about the newbies then? A couple of debuts tonight. What did you make of them?
Well, I mentioned earlier on, I thought young Matthew Anderson looked all right. Josh Dede looked pretty composed at right back. Apart from that, Owen Moffat had a few good moments actually out on that left-hand side. But again, as I said earlier, the standouts were really the sort of headline players for the B team, the one that you've heard people ranting and raving about for the last few months. I thought a lot of the other players that came in from the B team, they didn't look bad, but there wasn't anything to rave about either. It was just a sort of standard performance.
Yeah, Osaza Urhoghide gave Owen Moffat an absolutely horrific pass near the end of the game. If you're going to really pick holes in anybody's performance. Bernabe almost scored in his debut as well. It's difficult again. The caveat is we're not really playing anybody tonight, but it was good to see him becoming the first Argentinian.
He was on set pieces as well. It was him and Mikey Johnston that would always be up on them.
There was a moment though where I'm watching him, James, and he's looking in the box, and you've got Jullien, Lawal, and Urhoghide, and he decides to whip in a low cross, and I thought, oh, nice, because we need a wee bit of aerial prowess in the box for the set pieces. But I'm sure he'll learn. I'm sure Ange and Harry Kuehl will let him know. Listen, it's been really interesting and enjoyable tonight for a 7-0 victory for Celtic. We move on to Saturday. I don't know who will be on the show, but we will be covering it as normal. Got to thank everybody. 700 live on tonight's show, which is superb. If you haven't done so already, get yourself subscribing to the channel. We have got loads coming up. If you haven't watched the Richard Jobson interview, he was an absolutely tremendous guest when I met him in Dunfermline recently. We've got Las Vegas coming up, met them last week, so that interview will be on the channel very soon as well, and loads of other tremendous, really enjoyable video content. Great to do, and I'm hoping that it will be great to watch as well. All that's left for me to say is our new signing, James McKenzie. Thank you for joining me again on A Celtic State of Mind.